Okay, Laura, what is the theme this week?
The theme is, what is the weather like in April?
So April is a fantastic month to travel in New Zealand. This is really when the crowd dies down, when the weather is still quite clement, and where most of the activities in New Zealand are still available. So it's one of the best time, or at least that's what we think, to travel around New Zealand. But obviously, weather is always a big concern for travelers when coming to New Zealand. So we're going to cover pretty much everything there is to do with the weather in April in New Zealand today in this video. Okay, so let's begin our coverage of the New Zealand weather in April with a few travel tips for New Zealand in April. And to do that, I'm going to pass you to the beautiful Laura.
All right, so we're going to start with some tips. And our number one tip for April is a very unpredictable month in terms of the weather. So make sure you're prepared for everything, including warm clothing, also some lighter clothing when it is actually a little bit hotter, and also some wet weather gear. As always in New Zealand, it can rain at any time. Another tip is to make sure that you still are having high factor sunscreen in your day pack for when you're traveling around New Zealand. Even in April, the UV rays can be pretty harsh. And as for the tourist season, April is usually a quieter season to be traveling around in New Zealand. So you don't usually have to worry too much about booking most of your accommodations or your activities, perhaps except for a few exceptions, like say if you are wanting to stay in Milford Sound at the Milford Sound Lodge and it's the only paid accommodation in the area, then those sort of places you might want to always book all year round. But for most places, you can be a little bit more spontaneous when you're traveling in April. But on a similar note, also it is the school holidays during April, so that's New Zealand school holidays. So there will be, the more family tourist attractions may be a little bit busier during those times. So you might want to look up the term dates for the April school holidays and just maybe make a bit of bookings on that couple of weeks that happens. And then finally, when you're doing some hiking, April is a great month to do some hiking. Just make sure that you check the hiking trail description on the Department of Conservation website, because sometimes after April, there can be some times when bad weather causes some of the hiking trails to be washed out or damaged. So make sure that your track that you want to do is actually open on the Department of Conservation website.
Boom! Too easy to travel with Laura's tips. I love it! In the meantime, let's continue with our coverage of the April weather. And this time around, we're going to be talking about the typical temperature in April in New Zealand. So, Laura, take your position of power over there in the back and let's get started. So April is a great time to travel in New Zealand, as I mentioned earlier on in this video. It is less busy and the weather is still relatively favorable, but nevertheless the weather can be extremely changeable in New Zealand in April, like it is pretty much all the time in the country. So let's go over what kind of temperatures you guys can expect. And let's start with Northern New Zealand, which includes the region of Northland, the city of Tauranga and the city of Auckland. Did I say that? Yeah, Auckland, yes. So that's about 15 degrees Celsius on average, which is 59 degrees Fahrenheit if you are one of those that use an archaic system of weather following things. Yes. Okay, then we're going to move on to central North Island. Hamilton, Taupo and Rotorua are the main cities that you can expect there. And the average temperature there in April is 13 degrees Celsius, which is 55 degrees Fahrenheit. If you want to travel around New Zealand in the southwest North Island, that is New Plymouth, Palmerston North, and even let's include Wellington May as well, that is an average of 14 degrees Celsius, which is 57 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we're going to head to eastern North Island, which is Gisborne, Napier, and the Wairarapa region. And that would be an average of 12 degrees Celsius, which is 54 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, let's hope that the ferry is not cancelled this time. And let's try to make our way toward the South Island of New Zealand. I know this one was a deep jab for all of you traveling at the moment. It has been a bit chaotic on a ferry. And let's head to northern South Island with Blenheim and Nelson. Blenheim and Nelson have an average of 14 degrees Celsius, which is 57 degrees Fahrenheit on average. Western Southern End, which is Westport, Hokitika, Milford Sound, that's an average of 11 to 13 degrees Celsius, which is 52 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's hop back to the other side. Let's take the Transalpine train and head to the eastern Southern End with Kaikoura, Christchurch and Timaru. And that's an average of 13 degrees Celsius, which is 55 degrees Fahrenheit. A nice road trip toward the Queenstown area, passing through beautiful Lake Tekapo, checking out Alexandra. That's an average of 9 degrees Celsius, 9 to 12 degrees Celsius, which is 48 to 54 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you feel like you have a bit of extra time to explore the deep south of New Zealand, the southern New Zealand, the city of Dunedin and Invercargill, you can expect 12 degrees Celsius, which is 54 degrees Fahrenheit. On average, all of those are obviously average temperature and things can change.
All right, that was a very nice commentary.
I got to make it fun. All right, so let's talk about a more weather pattern in April, and let's start with the average rainfall in the country. So this is when we start getting some really beautiful colors on the tree. This is when we start getting all those orange and yellows in the tree, which is really cool. So you're gonna expect some like nice crispy sunny days, but there is still a lot of snow in New Zealand in April because there is snow all the time in New Zealand. So let's go over some of the average rainfall in the country. Okay, so let's get started with Northern New Zealand. So you know it by now, it's Northland, Auckland and Tauranga. We expect 130 millimeters of rain, which is 5 inches for the month of April. In central North Island, it is the town of Hamilton, the lakeside town of Taupo, and the beautiful geothermal place that is Rotorua. You can expect about 70 millimeters of rain, which is 2.7 inches. If you head to the southwest North Island, we include everything: New Plymouth, Palmerston North, Wellington. You can expect 100 millimeters of rain, which is 4 inches. And to wrap up the North Island, if you are heading to the eastern North Island, that's Gisborne, Napier, and even the whole Wairarapa region, that's 70 millimeters of rain, which is 2.7 inches. Again, your ferry was cancelled, but you still made it to the South Island, which is really awesome. Northern South Island, Blenheim and Nelson, 60 millimeters of rain, which is 2 inches. If we head to the west coast with Westport, Hokitika, even the Franz Joseph and Fox Glacier area, all the way down to Milford Sound, then this is where we get a lot of rain, right? 250 to 600 millimeters of rain. That's 10 to 24 inches of rain, people. So yeah, be prepared and come with your rain jacket. An umbrella is not enough. Okay, again, we are crossing the Southern Alps and heading Southern Alps, and we're heading to Kaikoura, Christchurch, and even Timaru, and you can expect 50 millimeters of rain, which is about 2 inches. In the inland South Islands, you get Lake Tekapo, you get Queenstown, and you get Alexandra. You can also expect about 50 millimeters of rain, which is 2 inches. And finally, if you head to Dunedin, Invercargill, all the way down, it's 60 millimeters of rain, which is 2.4 inches on average. So as you can see, it is still wet in New Zealand in April. Okay, everybody, we're going to continue with our coverage of the weather related kind of information you need to know for traveling in New Zealand in April. And now we're going to give you a few recommendations of some of the best places to visit in New Zealand in April, starting with Laura.
Okay, so Wanaka is a good place to visit in April. It's during, obviously, autumn, and there's a lot of beautiful autumn scenery in the Wanaka area because there's a lot of introduced species of trees that do change with the seasons, unlike native New Zealand trees. So if you're looking for that autumn sort of landscape, Wanaka is a good place to go.
Another great place to visit in April in New Zealand is Gisborne because, well, Laura was talking about all the different trees that you can see. Well, in Gisborne, there is the East Wood Hill Arboretum. The East Wood Hill Arboretum is the largest collection of Northern Hemisphere trees in the Southern Hemisphere. Yes, that is a title that they have. And so at that point, it is, it's full autumn. So therefore, you get all the trees of all the different colors, and it's absolutely fantastic. Plus, on top of that, the Gisborne area offers world-class wine. So if you're a bit of a wine aficionado, that's going to be pretty awesome. And if you want to dabble into surfing, there's some great entry-level surf areas over there. And with a wetsuit, it's a great thing to do in April.
Speaking of wine, Marlborough region, which is at the top of the South Island, is a really great place to visit in April with its quite usually favourable weather. It's usually a bit drier up there compared to the rest of the South Island. It's also a little bit warmer than the rest of the South Island. So it's a good place to rent a bike, go in, hop around all the different wineries. And if it is a bit of a chilly day, then at least, a couple of glasses of wine will probably warm you up.
Okay, so next up on the list, we have the world famous Milford Sound. So one of the busiest attractions in New Zealand is awesome to visit in April because, well, it's not that busy. And I love that. I love the fact that you can get the whole sound pretty much to yourself, which is really, really great. Plus, the ever-changing weather in April can give you a bit of a gamble right here. You could have a perfect day in Milford Sound, or you can have an absolute storm of a day. And to be quite honest, I do prefer the storm of a day. There is much more to Milford Sound when it is a terrible weather. You get waterfall on every side of the mountains, and it's just an experience that you will never forget. Check out our videos on Milford Sound and you'll see what I'm talking about.
And finally, we always like to recommend an off-the-beaten-track location. So Taranaki is a good place to go on the west coast of the North Island. You can go hiking in the beautiful Egmont National Park with really amazing forests, trees covered in moss. It looks like something out of a fairy tale. But then there's also the artsy city of New Plymouth with lots of really cool sort of cool shopping, art galleries, museums, the coastal walkway. So just the whole area is really awesome. Great place to visit any time of the year, but especially in April.
What she said.